Have you ever wondered who the wealthiest women in the Bible were? These aren't just stories of riches, but tales of power, courage, and faith that changed history. From queens dripping in gold to businesswomen funding God's work, their wealth wasn't just for themselves, it shaped nations and faith itself. I bet you will never believe number 5, so stick around as we uncover the stories of the richest women in the Bible, some heroes, some villains, and the incredible lessons their lives still teach us today. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Christian Chronicles, and share this video with someone who loves a good story. Let's get into it. Number 1, Sarah, the wealthy matriarch of nations. Sarah, the wife of Abraham, wasn't just a mother of nations. She was a woman of immense wealth and influence. Did you know Sarah and Abraham didn't travel as simple nomads? They moved like royalty with a massive entourage of servants, livestock, silver, and gold. Genesis 13 verse 2 describes Abraham as very rich in livestock, silver, and gold, and Sarah, as his wife, shared in this abundance. Their wealth was so impressive that wherever they went, kings and rulers noticed. In Egypt, for instance, Pharaoh showered Abraham with even more riches: sheep, cattle, donkeys, camels, and servants, all because of Sarah's beauty and presence. Genesis 12, verse 16. Their household grew so large that Abraham and Lot, his nephew, had to part ways because the land couldn't support the sheer size of their flocks and herds. Genesis chapter 13, verse 5 to 6. Sarah wasn't just wealthy in possessions. Her status as the wife of a powerful patriarch gave her a unique position of influence. Her wealth and privilege allowed her to play a pivotal role in God's plan to create a nation through her son, Isaac, even when it seemed impossible. Next up, the Queen of Sheba, the woman who gave Solomon a fortune. If there's one woman who defined luxury and wealth, it was her. She was a queen in her own right, ruling a kingdom so wealthy that she arrived in Jerusalem with a caravan of gold, spices, and precious stones. 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 1 to 10. Let's get things straight. Historians estimate the 120 talents of gold she gave Solomon weighed over 4 tons. That's about the same as a fully grown elephant made entirely of gold. But she wasn't just throwing money around. She came to test Solomon's wisdom and see if his reputation for godly knowledge was true. After seeing his wealth and hearing his wisdom, she was so impressed that she praised the God of Israel. The Queen of Sheba's story shows us that wealth and curiosity can lead to a deeper understanding of truth. She wasn't just rich in gold, she sought to be rich in wisdom. Number 3. Esther, the orphan who became queen. Esther's story is the ultimate Cinderella tale. She was an orphan, raised by her cousin Mordecai, but ended up becoming the queen of Persia. And we're not talking about just any kingdom. This was one of the richest empires in the ancient world. Imagine living in a palace where everything was gold and silver, with marble floors and royal feasts that lasted for days. Esther chapter 1, verse 6 to 8. Esther's wealth wasn't just about jewels and royal robes, though. She used her position and influence to save her people, the Jews, from a deadly plot. When the chips were down, Esther risked everything, including her own life, to approach the king uninvited. Her bravery changed the course of history. Esther teaches us that wealth and influence are tools to be used for a greater purpose. Number 4, Lydia, the businesswoman who funded the church. Fast forward to the New Testament, and we meet Lydia, a successful businesswoman in Philippi. She sold purple cloth, which was a luxury item in the ancient world. Think of her as the CEO of a high-end fashion brand. Lydia was also deeply spiritual. When Paul came to Philippi, she was already a worshipper of God. After hearing Paul preach, she became a Christian and was baptized along with her entire household. But here's where Lydia really shines. She opened her home to Paul and his companions, turning it into a hub for the early church. Her wealth wasn't just for herself. She used it to support the spread of the gospel. Lydia's story shows us how business success and faith can go hand in hand when we're willing to use our resources for God's purposes. Number 5, Jezebel, the Queen Mother. Wait, she's on this list? When you think of wealth in the Bible, Jezebel probably isn't the first name that comes to mind. Yet, here she is, a queen with access to unimaginable riches and power. But unlike the other women on this list, Jezebel's story is a chilling warning about what happens when wealth is misused. Jezebel wasn't just any queen, she was a princess, daughter of King Ethbaal before she got married to King Ahab, ruler of Israel. Together, they lived in a palace of luxury. She had everything: power, influence, servants, jewelries, gold, and the resources of a kingdom at her fingertips. But Jezebel's story is less about her riches and more about how she used them. Spoiler alert, it wasn't good. Take the story of Naboth's vineyard in 1 Kings chapter 21. Jezebel saw something she wanted. A piece of land Naboth refused to sell to her husband. Instead of accepting this, Jezebel orchestrated a wicked scheme to falsely accuse Naboth of blasphemy, leading to his execution. She didn't just take his land, she trampled on justice, truth, and God's law to get it. Her wealth and power became tools for greed, idolatry, and destruction. She promoted the worship of Baal, persecuted God's prophets, and turned her influence into a weapon. Ultimately, her greed and misuse of power led to her shocking downfall, thrown from a window, trampled by horses, and left as a warning for generations to come. Jezebel's inclusion on this list is a stark contrast to the others. While most of these women used their wealth for good, Jezebel shows us how riches without righteousness can lead to disaster. She's a cautionary tale. Having wealth and power means nothing if your heart is far from God. For a wrap, I should remind you that the Bible's richest women had very different stories, but they all teach us something valuable. Whether you have little or much, the real question is this: how are you using what you've been given? If this inspired you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Christian Chronicles, and share it with someone who needs to hear these amazing stories. Let's keep learning and growing together. See you in the next video.